What happened when my son chose money over me? Real story. Mercedes Solano was 68 years old when she received the diagnosis that would expose the deepest fracture in her family. For over 40 years, she had worked tirelessly, first as a seamstress, later as the owner of a small tailoring workshop. After her husband died unexpectedly, she raised her 3 children alone. Ricardo, the responsible eldest, Valentina, sensitive but strong-willed, and Miguel, the youngest and her most protected. Everything she owned, a modest home and her workshop, had been earned through sacrifice. She never traveled, rarely bought anything for herself, and measured success only by one thing: her children's well-being. When her doctor informed her that she had a progressive chronic illness, it wasn't death that frightened her. It was dependency. For the first time in her life, she would need help. She invited her children to dinner and gently explained her condition. She told them she might eventually need company, support at medical appointments, perhaps assistance in daily life. She wasn't asking for financial help. She was asking not to be alone. What she received instead was hesitation and calculation. Soon after, the conversations began shifting. Ricardo brought paperwork and suggested transferring the house into his name to avoid future legal complications. Valentina argued that if Ricardo got the house, she should get the workshop. Miguel implied that the house was too big for her now and that it might make sense for him and his girlfriend to move in, while she relocated somewhere smaller. Mercedes felt something inside her break. Her children were not preparing to care for her. They were preparing to divide her. The pain was deeper than anger. It was disbelief. She had given them everything: education, stability, love, and now she felt reduced to an asset. One sleepless night, she wandered into her late husband's study. On a dusty shelf she found a copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, a book her husband had often read. Desperate for clarity, she began reading. She discovered Stoicism, the philosophy that teaches that we cannot control external events, only our judgments and responses to them. One idea struck her profoundly. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Mercedes realized she could not control her children's greed, but she could control whether it destroyed her peace. The next morning, she hired an independent lawyer. She secured her house and workshop legally and added protective clauses to her will. As long as she was alive, no one would manage or transfer her assets without her consent. Any attempt at pressure would result in consequences. When her children discovered this, they were furious. Ricardo accused her of mistrust. Valentina called her unfair. Miguel withdrew emotionally. Months passed with little contact. But something had changed in Mercedes. Instead of sinking into bitterness, she practiced Stoic discipline daily. Each morning she read from Marcus Aurelius and reflected on what was within her control: her character, her boundaries, her dignity. She strengthened new bonds. Her neighbor became a steady companion. She hired a young single mother named Lucia in her workshop and mentored her not only in sewing but in resilience. Mercedes began to understand that family is not only defined by blood, it is defined by loyalty, respect, and consistent action. About a year later, Miguel returned. His business had collapsed. His relationship had ended. But this time, he came without demands. He admitted that he had seen his mother as property, not as a person. He had begun therapy. He was ashamed. Mercedes did not immediately forgive him with open arms. Instead, she told him calmly, "If you truly want to change, show me with time." Miguel did. He visited regularly. He accompanied her to medical appointments. He repaired things around the house. He spoke little about inheritance and much about accountability. Slowly, trust rebuilt itself through small, repeated acts of sincerity. Later, Valentina returned as well. Therapy had forced her to confront her resentment and projection. She admitted that her financial struggles had clouded her judgment. She, too, began showing up without asking for anything. Ricardo was the last to change. Years passed before he reached out. Pride had isolated him. But after losing his marriage and facing his own failures, he finally understood that wealth without character is emptiness. His letter to his mother was humble and stripped of entitlement. He didn't ask about property. He asked for a chance to be her son again. Mercedes welcomed him, carefully, but genuinely. She had learned something essential. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is releasing resentment while maintaining wisdom. Eventually, she updated her will once more. The house would be divided equally among her 3 children, not as a reward, but as a reflection of reconciliation. The workshop would go to Lucia, whose loyalty had honored its legacy. And Mercedes created a small foundation in her husband's memory dedicated to teaching Stoic philosophy to people experiencing family betrayal and personal crisis. Because Stoicism had not removed her suffering. It had transformed it. Mercedes lived to 85. In her final years, her children cared for her not because they expected anything, but because they had grown. They had learned that love without respect is manipulation, and that family requires character, not entitlement. Her final lesson was simple. You can love deeply without surrendering your dignity. You can forgive without removing boundaries. And your worth is never determined by how others treat you. The worst betrayal of her life became the catalyst for her greatest evolution. She didn't control her children's choices. She controlled who she chose to become. Are you interested in Stoicism, personal growth, and real-life transformation stories? Then subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. Follow us on all our social media platforms to stay connected with our community. Join the family of Stoic Stories and learn how to turn pain into wisdom.